This is a story that takes us right into the dark underbelly of America's healthcare system, a place most of us would rather not visit, but we know all too well. This is the case of Luigi Mangione and the shocking murder of a healthcare executive that has everyone talking but isn't as clear-cut as law enforcement is painting it out to be. It's December 4th, 2024. Brian Thompson, the 50-year-old CEO of United Healthcare, steps out of a swanky Midtown Manhattan hotel. The city's alive as usual, people rushing to work holiday. Decorations lighting up the streets. Thompson was likely heading to another day of board meetings and power lunches with no idea that he was walking into his last day alive. Security camera catch a hooded figure trailing Thompson. The ascent is calm, almost too tall. Then, without warning, 3 gunshots fired point blank into Thompson's back. He collapses instantly, and the shooter, full as a cucumber, they just walk away. It's like something out of a movie, except this was very, very real. When police arrived, the scene wasn't just gruesome. It was downright eerie. Next to Thompson's body were 3 spent shell casings, each engraved with a single haunting word: deny, defend, and deposed. It was a chilling callback to United Healthcare's infamously controversial practices of denying and defending against insurance claims. Someone had clearly sent a message, and it was as loud as it was terrifyingly clear. Now, let's talk about why Thompson wasn't exactly beloved by the public. Under his leadership, United Healthcare became synonymous with prioritizing profit over patients. Stories of denied life, saving treatments, and financially ruined families were everywhere. Thompson's cold dismissal of these accusations didn't help either. Just days before his death, he reportedly told a grieving mother at a public meeting, "It's just business." Public reaction to the murder was mixed. Sure, most people condemned the violence, but let's just say there wasn't a whole lot of sympathy for Thompson. Social media exploded with memes like "Guess his life wasn't covered under the plan," while others called this a wake-up call for America's healthcare system. But the big question loomed: who was bold enough to pull this off? The investigation was like peeling an onion layer by layer. More shocking details began to emerge. The first big break came from security footage at a nearby hostel. A man identified as Luigi Mangione checked in under a fake name. But here's what stood out: he wasn't some jittery on-edge criminal. He was charming, almost disarmingly, so witnesses said he smiled at the clerk and even cracked a joke. This was no random act. This was methodical. Mangione had scoped out the area and concocted a plan that was almost untraceable, according to law enforcement. He used a bicycle to get to the point where Thompson was after the killing. He jumped in a cab and then went to the bus depot before boarding the subway back to Penn Station, leaving New York City. There was a definite attempt to cover tracks soon after he got out of New York. The security footage images of the suspect, supposedly identified as Mangione, were circulated around the country. Everyone was watching and waiting. Fast forward 5 days later to Aluna, Pennsylvania, where Mangione was finally apprehended. At a McDonald's, he was sitting there with a laptop, calm as ever, until the cops showed up. Then he allegedly started trembling uncontrollably. When police searched him, they found a homemade handgun matching the murder weapon, a suppressor fake AS. And this is where it gets really dark: a handwritten manifesto. The manifesto read, quote, "These parasites had it coming," unquote. And what could be better than killing a CEO at his own bean counting conference? But one of the most important pieces of evidence was actually the fake New Jersey ID that Mangione had on his person. Reportedly, it was the same one used at the hostel in New York, where he was captured on security footage. So who exactly is Mangione? On paper, he seems like your average tech worker, a privileged Ivy League grad from a wealthy family. He had a knack for machine learning and a passion for gaming. But dig a little deeper, and you will find a man consumed by rage against corporate America, particularly the healthcare industry. Allegedly, Mangione suffered from severe spondylitis, a condition where one of the vertebrae in his spine slipped out of place, and this caused him chronic, debilitating pain. This led to a major spinal surgery. And now the dates vary. Some say the condition worsened in 2018, and others say his surgery for it only occurred in 2023. But either way, Mangione began to withdraw from his social circle sometime over the last year. So let's assume the surgery was a little more recent. Now, his mother reported him missing to the San Francisco Police Department just weeks before the killing, saying that she'd had no contact with him since July of 2024. She believed that he was working somewhere in San Francisco, which is why she contacted that department. It's unclear, though, if San Francisco PD did anything to try to locate Mangione. That kind of dismissal also points to a glaring problem within yet another system. Now, here's where things get even more interesting after the surgery. But before all of this happened, Manon turned to Reddit, posting about his condition in painstaking detail. These weren't just your average woe is me posts he was venting about his frustrations about the healthcare system. He called out insurance companies claiming their delays and denials left him financially drained and emotionally wrecked. The posts are a mix of desperation and bitterness, painting a picture of a man who felt utterly failed by the very system he had relied on for relief. But it doesn't stop there. Manon's digital footprint reveals a fascination with revolutionary literature and a growing disdain for corporate greed, from Crooked out winning the back pain industry to Ted Kazan's industrial society and its future. His reading list was like a manifesto in progress. On one hand, he criticized the healthcare industry for being exploitative, and on the other hand, he seemed to romanticize the idea of fighting back against oppressive systems, even likening Kaczynski to a political revolutionary. So what led to this seething hatred? Sources suggest that his surgery might not have gone as planned, possibly leaving him with chronic issues that extended beyond physical pain. Rumors even surfaced that he struggled with intimacy due to the complications from the operation, further isolating him. It's like the healthcare system wasn't just part of his life. It became the villain in his story. So was Luigi Mangione, a man pushed to the brink by pain and injustice. Or did his bitterness and resentment morph into something darker, something that led him to commit one of the most shocking acts of corporate retaliation in recent history? Additionally, how did he manage to get Thompson's schedule kept tight under lock and key? The planning had to have been meticulous and suggested an intelligence far beyond what we would normally expect for a retribution killing, at least what we've seen in recent years. What's so unnerving about Mangione, if he did it, is the sheer precision of his plan. He used a ghost gun, likely 3D printed, and engraved those shell casings to send a message that would resonate nationwide. This wasn't just an act of violence, it was a calculated statement. And boy, did the statement land. The healthcare industry went into full panic mode, with executives hiring extra security and keeping a low profile. Meanwhile, protests erupted across the country demanding reforms to a system many see as broken beyond repair. But the case took an unexpected turn when the public latched onto something totally unrelated to the crime. Mangiane's looks. After the surveillance footage was released, social media users began creating fan edits of his mugshot with those piercing eyes and tousled hair, and they flooded platforms like TikTok. While some were horrified by this trend, others pointed out it's part of a disturbing pattern where the public fascination with crime blurs the line between justice and spectacle. But the reason for this is because this case isn't just about one man's crime. It's a mirror reflecting our deepest fears about a healthcare system that feels less like a safety net and more like a trend. A lot of content exploded on the internet after the capture, especially when suggestions of evidence were released to the public. Within hours, internet sleuths had supposedly uncovered his entire manifesto on Substack, and a video appeared on YouTube mentioning a countdown to December 11. But the thing is, none of these can be verified. The manifesto is almost certainly not real and was hastily published after it came out that Mangione had been arrested, and the YouTube video was promptly removed after it was discovered that the account allegedly had no link to Mangione's verified account. But that didn't stop millions of people from posting about this supposed evidence online, and a million other people believed it. This is one of the things that's so dangerous about the current landscape of media and connection. The truth gets skewed. People believe whatever they see without question, and this can be a very, very dangerous thing on social media. Many were hailing him as a hero and a vigilante. The Altoona McDonald's where the informant worked has since been flooded with negative Google and Yelp reviews. This killing not only revealed what was simmering beneath the surface of American culture, it also became a great marketing opportunity. Within hours, merchandise with the words "Deny, Defend," and "Depose" had popped up on eBay and even other sites. People are picking apart every detail, and one of the wildest ideas out there, that Mangione may have been playing Monopoly. A TikTok sleuth who goes by Lynn's unhinged, great name by the way, came up with this Monopoly theory, and honestly, it's a wild ride. She's saying Mangione's actions, including his escape and eventual arrest, might have been part of some elaborate real-life version of the game. For example, after the attack, Andoni fled into Central Park, which she claims represents the free parking space, the one where you hit the jackpot. And get this, when police arrested him, they reportedly found Monopoly money in his backpack. There's also this Monopoly rule, where if you roll doubles 3 Times in a row you're sent directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Lindsay thinks Manon planned this whole thing because he wanted to get caught now. Let's talk about the 186 conspiracy theory. Apparently, this number keeps popping up everywhere in the case. Magnon's X account, exactly 286, posts his favorite Pokemon broom Pokédex number 286. The distance from the crime scene to where he was caught in Altoona, 286 mil. It's oddly specific. There's also a loose link to the Bible. Proverbs 26 says, "Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is seer in his ways." Sounds like a jab at the wealthy healthcare exec, doesn't it? Some people think so, and if you're in the healthcare industry, the number 286 is also a denial code for missed appeal deadlines. Now, not everyone's buying into the monopoly angle. There are also theories that Manon might have been framed by the FBI or used as a ball guy. Classic internet sleuthing, half paranoia, half what if so. While public eye has deemed Manon as the perpetrator, there's still a lot of information that we're missing. What are the actual details? After Manon's capture, law enforcement claimed that they had a bunch of evidence directly linking him to the crime. We're talking fingerprints and shell casings allegedly tying him to the crime scene. Not only that, but also what they found when they caught him. These in themselves are serious charges. But there's also the alleged handwritten notes found in his possession that investigators believe might point to a motive. Prints lifted from a water bottle and a protein bar found near the Manhattan crime scene are also allegedly a positive match for Manon. This crucial detail, announced by NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch, is the first direct forensic link tying Manon to the cold-blooded killing. As for the gun found on Manon during his arrest in Pennsylvania, according to authorities, its shell casings are a match to those recovered at the scene. But there's something a little sketchy about this. Forensic evidence generally takes a while to be processed, at least longer than a day or two. So how did this get matched so quickly? Then again, would law enforcement release any of these details if the evidence wasn't solid? Either way, there's a lot of alleged evidence set against this one guy, right? And if you think his legal team has a solid plan to fight this well, think again. His lawyer Thomas Dickey has gone on record saying that he hasn't seen anything that directly implicates Mangione yet. But let's be real here, with all the alleged forensic evidence piling up, it's not going to be easy to argue that Mangione isn't connected to this crime. And experts are already weighing in, saying that he's got two main defense options. Option 1, claim he didn't do it, or Option 2, admit he did it, but argue there's a reason he shouldn't be held responsible. But neither of those is exactly a slam dunk. Former prosecutor Mitchell Epner even called the "it wasn't me" defense a non-starter. And for a case like this, with forensic and ballistic evidence leading straight to the accused, it's hard to see how Manon's team will make that argument stick. That's questioning Manon's mental state. They could argue that he's not fit to stand trial, meaning he can't really understand what's happening in court. And if a judge agrees, the trial would be delayed indefinitely or possibly forever. Or they could go for an insanity plea, saying Mangione wasn't in control of his actions because of some kind of mental defect. But let's be honest, those defenses are long shots. And even if they work, Mangione wouldn't walk free. He'd likely end up institutionalized. But the legal drama doesn't stop there. Right now, Manon is fighting extradition from Pennsylvania to New York, where he faces a second-degree murder charge. This fight could drag on for weeks or maybe even months. Legal experts are saying it's mostly a stalling tactic, but it could give his defense team a chance to peek at the evidence prosecutors have lined up. Meanwhile, this case isn't just playing out in the courtroom. Some people have actually started crowdfunding for Mangione's defense, raising thousands of dollars. And there's this whole anti-corporate narrative gaining traction online, with members of the public lashing out at the healthcare industry. There's even talk of a so-called hit list targeting other executives with their names and salaries posted for the world to see. Mocked up wanted posters have popped up in Manhattan, and police are warning that other CO might be in danger. Former FBI agent Timothy Gallagher said it best: this case is getting an outpouring of support from dark corners the internet, and that could inspire copycat attacks. It's a cultural watershed moment fueled by social media. Not only that, but it fuses together two major things we see in content: true crime and memes. Even the message left on the casings found at the crime scene prime it for circulation. The high cost of healthcare is a universal issue, so it resonates with a lot of people, which is why we're seeing so much praise from Mangione. It's basically a mass expression of grievance. with a $5 trillion industry, and it's highlighting something huge simmering beneath the surface. The online culture takes it up one step further by bringing it beyond politics and hitting bipartisan lines. Everyone is affected, no matter their political stance. This could also indicate what's to come: political violence. There's a clear loss of faith in institutions, not only in America, but all over the world. The question is, what's next? We've got to look towards justice. But there also needs to be a conversation about the issue of healthcare, the worldwide divide between the rich and the poor, and the issue of valuing profits over basic humanity. And right now, corporate America has a massive target on its back. This symbolic takedown could definitely inspire others. Just hours after the crime went viral, companies heightened security measures, so it definitely isn't scaring these companies into submission. They're just getting more protection. And in the eyes of the public, this would be a bad news. Now, let's talk about M. John's court appearance. Reportedly, he was sitting there smirking at the rows of reporters and even interrupting his own lawyer during the proceedings. His lawyer quickly shushed him. But outside the courtroom, Dickie had more to say. He told reporters, quote, "You can't rush to judgment in this case. He's presumed innocent," unquote. Dickie is sticking to his guns, pun intended, insisting that the firearm linked to the crime could just be a coincidence. He said a lot of guns look the same to ABC. When I asked about those handwritten pages, police say point to a motive. Dickie admitted that they certainly could be significant, but maintained that he hasn't seen them yet. Remember, the prosecution doesn't have to give the defense anything until the hearing. That means Dickie would only have a couple of hours to dispute the evidence. But let's take a look at the other side of things. Could the prosecution have less of a case than we realized? First off, it might be difficult to prove absolute guilt. So yes, they could get him on the possession charges and forgery charges. But what about conclusively proving murder? I mean, first off, motive: Mangione wasn't insured by United Health. So why would he target Thompson directly? Sure, Mangione had grievances with the healthcare system as a whole, but this was potentially an unrelated killing. Thompson had been receiving tons of threats, but none of those can be traced back to Mangione. Secondly, we've got the ghost gun. Essentially, it's a gun without fingerprints. It's got no serial number and no way to be traced. Anybody can print them, which is why it's so illegal to have one in your possession. It's very hard to use them in an investigation. Sure, the fact that he had one on him will hurt him, but can it actually be linked back to Thompson? Then there's an additional problem: the jury selection. The prosecution is going to have a difficult time finding 12 Americans who haven't had a difficult time with the healthcare system, be it knowing someone who's died because of it or not having access to care themselves. And it'll be difficult to find a jury who's impartial to it. News outlets are reporting that a grand jury has been paneled and things are starting to speed up. Police have so far issued 3 new search warrants, one for the backpack found in Central Park that they identified as belonging to the killer, and one for a burner phone allegedly found near the crime scene. This is being seen as an ideology killing, which isn't easy to convict without a direct admission. Like with the Unabomber, ironically, hard evidence was limited. The thing is, as Mangione's lawyer has pointed out, he's innocent until proven guilty. But things just don't really make sense. If he was innocent, why did Mangione give officers a false name when they questioned him? Why did he have a fake ID? Supposedly, the manifesto also had a task list for how to kill an executive at the same level as Brian Thompson. Additionally, it's been reported that the manifesto contained plans for a bomb that Mangione had written, that he was concerned about harming innocent people in the process and wanted to make the assassination more targeted. So yes, there's evidence, but whether that can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt remains to be seen. The hearing will only happen on December 23rd, so we've still got a while before we the public get to hear all of the evidence. And when it comes to the spiral notebook found, criminal profilers say it's definitely not unusual to write down a plan. But it is strange how this successful, well-liked, intelligent young man turned to this in a relatively short period of time. So did a mental illness emerge later in life, maybe caused by the complications from his surgery? There was significant isolation before the killing, which could point to failing mental health. One of the more interesting aspects of the case is also the efficiency. Anyone who has experience with guns knows how difficult it is to shoot while walking, especially when there's a suppressor on the nozzle with a 3D printed gun. It's even harder. I mean, it's an insane plan. Was Mangione really skilled enough to have that kind of expertise? Had he practiced? Was there evidence of him practicing in the months leading up to the murder? Another interesting point to consider in all of this goes back to Manon's family and friends, who were desperately trying to contact him in the last few months before the killing. No one knew where he was. Get all these people who loved and cared for him didn't recognize him in those surveillance footage images. These guys knew him best. They'd known him for years. It's not possible that all of them, all the people Mangione knew, had decided to cover for him at all. And how did a stranger at McDonald's manage to recognize a man sitting in the back with a surgical mask covering his face to formally charge someone? There only needs to be probable cause. Is it more likely than not that this person can be linked to or did commit the crime? And right now, it's looking like Mangione can definitely be tied to it if the evidence is to be believed. We're still waiting on all the DNA, but we've got the gun, the writing, the alleged fingerprints, and the fake ID. So it seems like the case is pretty strong. Meanwhile, Mangione is being held in Huntington Prison in Pennsylvania, and he's already notorious among his inmates, even though he's not been able to interact with any of them. This presents a security risk. Some inmates might want more fame, which makes Mangione a target. He's also wealthy and handsome, and this could be seen as a challenge to the more hardened criminals. Others are more supportive. News crews captured a few shouting out the windows of the prison-free Luigi and saying the prison conditions are sick. So far, the only person who has visited Mangione is his lawyer. He's allowed other visitors, but as of right now, there are no reports of any visits from his family. But this might be a legal tactic. Prison visits and phone calls are all recorded, which can be bad for the defense. But right now, we are left with one ultimate question. Who is Luigi Mangione? Really, was he a brilliant Ivy League student who somehow snapped a mastermind playing a game no one else understands, or just a convenient scapegoat in a high-stakes murder mystery? The case against Mangione looks solid, but with so many unanswered questions and strange coincidences, it's impossible not to wonder, are we missing something? Or is this just another tragic example of a promising life unraveling in the most shocking way possible? What happens if Mangione's trial reveals cracks in the justice system or exposes corruption tied to powerful entities? What if his case becomes a rallying cry for those disillusioned with the government, or maybe even a symbol for fringe movements looking for their next cause? We've seen it before. High-profile cases like this don't just end in the courtroom. They can spark protests, divide communities, and even influence policy. And here's the chilling part. Whether Mangione is innocent or guilty, this case has already taken a life of its own. The conspiracy theories, the bizarre symbolism, the viral movements, all of it is fueling a narrative that could ripple far beyond this one tragedy. Could this be the spark that deepens societal fractures and pushes the country into even more polarized territory? So now we're left asking, is this just a strange, twisted tale? Or are we witnessing the beginning of something much bigger? A case that might not just decide one man's fate, but potentially change the course of America itself.